you need a list of the people that you're going to raise from. You can start in a sheet. Later, this will move to a HubSpot. You need a blurb. So what does somebody get in an email? Like if you send me something, I'm going to forward it to investors. And then you need a deck. And there may be supplementary materials here, like you might have some market analysis or some other things like this. But basically a blurb, a data, or a blurb, a deck, and a list of people that you want to get those things. Data room is a collection basically of all of the things that might be relevant for somebody who wants to invest in you. You send this to them near the end of the process, and it has, of course, the deck and any of the materials that they've already gotten. And then it has things like previous safes, right? Or if you've raised money before, anyone who's been involved in it, it has like the cap table if you have this. It'll have things like the market analysis or some financial projections. It'll have any other things that people might ask for along the process that you want to send to them all at once. And so you're not like one-to-one sending this person that and this, that. You're like, hey, I've got a data room. Here's everything in it that you might want. But I do know that I think it's, some people don't send decks initially. Like I think basically the simplest way to do it is get people an initial email that has a blurb and a deck. And so they can review it, and you need to get a meeting with them initially. So don't like hide the ball. But the data room, I think you don't need to get people. It's like overkill initially, and is the kind of thing that you can follow up with them further along in the process. The blurb is like, it certainly changes over time. At the beginning, you're like, here's what I'm doing in, 1 or 2 sentences. Here's a deck that they can link to. And then here's basically like, what's the sexiest thing that you have, right? And so it tends to be, the way that it tends to grow is with the traction you have in the round, right? Like we're raising 500K and we have half of it full. We think we're going to close it in a few weeks. Once that's over, you're like, we're raising 500 and it's filled, we're oversubscribed, we're thinking about raising more. This is an example, although this is at the end of a oversubscribed seed round that we did, our second. So it looks like the best possible blurb, but we should go find, I'm sure we can find actually an earlier version, and especially from the first round. But basically, what's important in this also, and I just actually did this with Kate, who sent me a blurb, is that it's an email sent to this person who's then forwarding it, right? So I'm like, hey, hi Liz, it was great to chat the other day. And I think a core thing about this is that I'm reflecting that Liz is involved, right? So I'm like, I'm really happy that you're joining the round and like looking forward to working with you, right? And so this signals to anyone she's sending it to that it's not just like a random thing she's passing on, but something that she's committed to. And then in this case, I said, right, here's a blurb and a deck for sort of strategic and mission aligned people. I know we said, so we normally don't share the data room here. We were trying to close the round at the end. And we were just like, let's get everybody the info right away. We have a couple weeks left. And it's also easier to do that if you're oversubscribed, right? And so then you have our blurb below this. This is maybe the most important motion of the whole process, is getting herding cats, right? Or getting somebody that you know who knows a bunch of people and has knows 2 people that you're trying to get to that has warm relationships with them, to send over your thing to them and have you book a call with you, right? Like these things, it doesn't really work with sending cold outreach, though of course that has worked for some people. But like the way that this goes is that either other investors who are their friends or people in their other founders in their current portfolio forward something along to them saying, hey, you should take a look at this. And so I want to give Liz basically a very easy, forwardable, email that she can then send to other people. And so what I'm doing here is giving her our blurb that she can send to people, and then the context on it, so that when somebody receives it, they'll get all of that at once, and then she can very easily just come in and forward it. And this is a general one. What we did do, right, as you'll remember, and I was just looking through this, maybe we can open up this email, like these series of emails from Eric Rees, is he gave us a list of people and was like, give me a personalized blurb for each one. And so we did exactly that, where you write a blurb like this, but you're like, oh, it'd be great to have Dustin in, we're aligned on these things. We love open fill, or, we said something about me playing basketball for Mark Cuban in the PS, right? And you're like, this is perfect for them. And so then they're getting a blurb to them that's like, clearly you've taken the time to personalize it and talk to their person already, and they've decided to forward it. So it's a much harder thing to not take that meeting, right? And they can say, hey, I'm not investing now, but the template, right? Basically this, and this is a generic version of it where you're like, you have this, maybe this piece is the most important thing, right? You have this template that's just like, it was great to chat. And here I just said pretty clearly, like, here's a blurb and a deck for strategic and mission aligned people, which is who we were looking for at the time, right? Who could we fill this out with like angels that might be able to help us in the future? And then this is the blurb, right? And so you get this 1 to 2 sentence on it, right? We're a donation platform. You get the sort of analogy that everybody uses. Of course, this is the previous thing we were building. You get another sentence about it, and then you get what we're doing here. Like, we're raising a seed round right away. Here's the deck. And then I included, again, the market analysis of financial projections. And then here a link to the data room, though we don't usually. And then this is sort of the traction piece, right? Like, we've recently launched this thing. It's really taken off. We've suddenly gotten, something like 40,000 users. Here's the money we make. Like, this is all just very strong, right? This one sentence is like maybe the most important sentence in here. And then, as we talked about before, we kind of have the like social proof of this was shared by this. Here are some other, like, here's something looking toward the future that we're excited about. And then to the point of kind of like social proof around the round, here we're saying, okay, we're raising, this 3 million. Sometimes it makes sense to include the amount, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, we were oversubscribed. And so we're saying, like, we have participation from these angels. I think maybe the heuristic here is something like you can share angels because they're not really talking about stuff, but you really don't want to share who is going to be leading the round with other people. They'll talk about it, and then now you have this like information asymmetry. But angels are fine and can kind of bring this feeling of like this is happening. What really matters here is that we're like this word, right, that we're oversubscribed.
We included VCs in the blurb too. We just didn't include leads.
Exactly.
Right. So
that's right. So we had
competition with each other or not.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Basically, are they in competition or not? And then here we said, previously raised from BetaWorks and Shrug and Ulu, but we didn't mention who's leading the round. I think the thing that you need to start the whole process is like a blurb and a deck, and then you'll get an initial meeting. And let's say that goes well, and then somebody's like, cool, I want to invest. I like the terms. That's awesome. But likely they'll ask you for more things, right? Or they may ask you like, can you show me more about this market? Like, I'm not familiar with nonprofits, right? Or something like this. And so at that point, you want to be able to send them and say, like, here's how we plan to, here's what the market looks like actually. And here's a lot more details. And here are the sources, right? Or here's how we plan to spend the money and what it looks like over 18 months in a bit of a Gantt chart. Or if people ask for like, you'll find what people are worried about or concerned about, right? With you and your team or your product or market. And so any materials that you find as you go through it that like give people some relief in that conversation, you might want to then put in a data room so future people, when they raise those things, you can just be like, hey, look at this, or you can preempt it actually, ideally, right?